By the time the situation fully registers, limbs already committed to movement, breath comes unevenly, pulled too sharply into lungs that cannot quite keep up with the pace survival demands. Somewhere behind them, figures continue to advance with disturbing ease, and looking back would only confirm it. A brief glance is enough to shatter whatever fragile optimism had been keeping the group moving, as though the outcome had been doomed from the start, and they are only now catching up to that fact. The scream that follows cuts violently through the sound of running feet. It does not resemble a plea for help, nor the cry of someone begging to be saved, but something far more humane. A final act meant to push the others forward, a reminder not to stop, that the danger grasping him will turn to them next. Yet within those fleeting seconds, the last traces of hope disappear with it, leaving behind the quiet realization that whatever comes after will no longer resemble a happy ending. What follows does not feel like the chaos of the street at all, as though the violence outside has been filtered into something mundane. Beneath a large pane of glass, they stood together, their eyes fixed on the remains of the same man taken moments before. The truth settles slowly in the silence between them. His body has been split cleanly in half, the cuts so precise and complete that their minds struggle to accept he had still been alive when it happened. The activity unfolding belongs to a different purpose entirely. Beneath them stretches something that looks like a kitchen, though the scale of it makes the comparison unsettling. An alien figure moves through the room with casual familiarity, the motions slow and deliberate in a way that suggests routine rather than cruelty. And within that same quiet space, a small child sits nearby while food is being prepared, the moment unfolding with a softness that would seem ordinary if not for the unsettling context surrounding it. What should have remained a simple act of feeding begins to change almost immediately as the infant's body responds poorly to the food being introduced to it, the child's breathing losing its natural rhythm while the swelling across its cheeks grows impossible to ignore, and the subtle transformation from care into rising concern unfolds quickly enough to replace the calm that filled the room. The confusion that follows quietly gives the humans beneath the glass a chance. For most of them, that possibility only shows up as the instinct to run. But Kiri's attention moves somewhere else entirely, drawn not toward escape, but toward the child itself. The uneven rhythm of its breathing carries a familiarity that quietly pushes past the urgency around her. The reaction happening in the infant's body reminds her of something she has seen before. The swelling, the sudden reaction, all match memories she had long before the world collapsed around her. What the child's experiencing is an immune response. The child is separated from the food before the reaction can worsen, Kiri forcing the obstruction from the baby's mouth while urgently directing the mother towards something cold. The desperation behind the human's gestures needs no translation, and moments later, ice is pressed against the swelling as the two of them work together in frantic silence. The change is almost immediate. The child's breathing begins to stabilize, the violent reaction slowly loosening its grip as the swelling recedes under the cold. Panic gives way to fragile relief inside the room, the danger that had appeared out of nowhere now retreating just as suddenly. The silence that follows the immediate danger doesn't last long before something else changes in that moment, and this time it unsettles Kiri for a different reason. Until now, the difference between them had been absolute. The humans beneath the glass were treated less like prisoners and more like ingredients waiting their turn, and the idea of conversation had never seemed worth considering from the alien side. But something about what just happened forces a small shift, and the device the alien mother activates soon removes the final barrier between them. For the first time since humanity wasn't reduced to prey, Words are exchanged through a language both sides can understand. The alien mother admits that nothing like what they just saw exists in their records, and whatever almost happened to the child is completely outside the knowledge her species brought with them. And that leaves only one person in the room able to help. Kiri describes how the immune system can mistake something harmless for a threat, how in the worst cases, that reaction can spiral far beyond what the body can control, that the result can become fatal. Kiri's explanation slowly takes shape within the conversation that follows, the unfamiliar idea forming piece by piece as she describes what she recognized in the child's condition, while the alien mother listens with growing focus, trying to make sense of concepts her species has never encountered before. The details themselves matter less than the conclusion that eventually emerges from the exchange. The reaction is not something beyond treatment, and that realization changes the direction of the moment almost immediately. What had appeared earlier is something Kiri can manage, something that can be cured. The conversation quickly turns toward what must be done next. Kiri explains what the treatment would require, and although much of the explanation remains unfamiliar to her, the meaning behind it becomes clear soon enough. If the child is to survive, the process will demand patience, repetition, and Kiri's continued guidance. The alien mother understands that saving her child depends on the human standing before her. Hesitation disappears entirely. What had begun as a moment of confusion quietly transforms into something more practical, an arrangement shaped by necessity as the alien mother accepts Kiri's help without reservation. She still looks for reassurance from her husband, but the response she receives offers little comfort. His attention remains fixed elsewhere, on the larger mission that brought them to this planet in the first place, where the hunt for humans and the survival of their species outweigh the problems unfolding inside their own home. Whatever problem she faced, she had to handle it herself, and as the exchange came to an end, the meaning behind it became clearer. Relying on the humans seems like her only option. With that decision settled, the strange arrangement between them begins to take shape almost immediately. Poppin commits fully to the plan Kiri described, following her guidance with the same determination she had shown when Boo Boo was first placed in danger. What had started as a desperate attempt to calm an unfamiliar reaction slowly becomes a routine shaped around careful observation and repetition, the treatment unfolding gradually as the days begin to pass. Each step is taken cautiously. The child watched closely for any sign that the violent response might return. Yet the progress that follows proves just enough to keep the alien mother's confidence from wavering. And with that, Kiri's role inside the household changes. That necessity quietly grants her a kind of freedom she would not have possessed otherwise. The incident with the child leaves behind another consequence that reaches far beyond the treatment itself. The discovery settles quietly in the back of Kiri's mind. If the biology that nearly killed the child follows rules, then those same rules might be used against these creatures. The realization does not leave her mind once it appears. Kiri's attention gradually shifts from simply guiding the treatment toward observing every detail surrounding it. Yet inconsistencies remain throughout the process, appearing often enough without apparent cause. The answer refuses to appear immediately until a minor accident finally reveals a detail Kiri had never had reason to notice before. A small injury Poppin had not realized she had caused while working with the blade. The wound itself insignificant, yet the blue color that appears along her arm lingers in Kiri's thoughts long after the moment passes. Variations in blood are not unfamiliar territory to her. Human bodies carry their own divisions beneath the surface, differences small enough to go unnoticed in everyday life, yet capable of provoking violent reactions under the right conditions. The realization leads her attention back toward earlier victims. small pieces still clinging to torn clothing, and engraved markings remain readable despite the damage. The pattern she has been watching slowly starts to make sense. Some bodies provoke the reaction, others do not. The thought settles into place without needing to be spoken, hidden in the small biological differences carried from one body to the next. For Kiri, the meaning of that discovery drifts beyond the treatment itself, and the more that thought settles into her mind, the clearer its implications begin to feel. Something that might one day turn their own biology against them. The treatment progresses in careful steps, the portions slowly increasing while Popin follows Kiri's instructions with absolute trust. A slow climb away from that first terrifying moment, and over time, the pattern begins to clarify itself enough for Kiri to start adjusting the treatment with greater precision. To Popin, Kiri's attention to detail feels reassuring, proof that the strange human she spared is simply doing what she once did for a living. Yet behind that calm exterior, another process unfolds at the same time, one that has far less to do with saving the child and far more to do with understanding these alien bodies. Popin leans more heavily on Kiri's guidance with each passing day, while the long hours spent inside the house begin to fill with conversations that wander beyond the treatment itself. The loneliness of her situation slowly reveals itself, fragments of a life shaped by responsibility, exhaustion, and the uneasy reality of raising a child in a world that was never meant to be theirs. It is during one of those conversations that the story of their journey begins to unfold with unexpected honesty. Their species had not arrived on Earth as a thriving civilization searching for expansion, but as a clan of people already standing at the edge of extinction. The population that crossed the stars had been small from the beginning, and preserving their future meant controlling every birth with absolute care. Families were no longer formed through chance or affection, but arranged with purpose. The next generation planned with the same calculation used to chart their course through space. The words settle quietly into Kiri's thoughts, carrying implications that reach far beyond the conversation itself. A civilization built upon such narrow genetic ground may appear stable on the surface, but over time, the entire population begins to share the same invisible vulnerabilities. Popin speaks of these things only as the difficult history that led them to Earth, unaware of the significance those details hold for the human listening beside her. She lowers her voice while speaking about the mistakes she believes she has made, apologizing softly to the sleeping child nearby, as though the words themselves might offer comfort. Within that quiet confession lies another truth the alien mother cannot see. Patterns harder to ignore. The possibility that the weakness she first glimpsed in Boo Boo may not belong to the child alone, but to every member of the species that followed her across the stars. The scattered details of the past months are finally settling into a perfect structure. So absorbed in that realization, she barely notices the subtle shift in the air behind her until another presence draws her out of her thoughts, and for a brief moment, she assumes it to be a familiar face. Yet the figure standing there is not the one she expected. Instead, she finds herself face to face with the alien father, his towering presence filling the space between them as his attention settles on her like someone who has discovered food that has strayed from where it should be. Without hesitation, he reaches for her, lifting her as though the matter required no further thought as he prepares to claim his next meal. The moment tightens toward its inevitable end until Popin's voice suddenly cuts through the room, quickly stepping between that simple intention as she explains that the human had been set aside for the child, that something far better was prepared for him instead. The interruption shifts his attention just enough for the tension to loosen its grip, tossing Kiri aside and turning his focus back toward his expectation of dinner. Kiri remains there, quietly aware that the work she began months earlier has already moved toward its purpose. Papin moves immediately to follow through on the promise she offered earlier, turning her attention toward the meal she assured would be worth the wait. Kiri remains silent as conversation drifts easily across the table. Talks of ceremonies, a message prepared to celebrate the founding of their new civilization on Earth. Marking the beginning of something historic for their species, the formal declaration that the long journey across the stars has finally reached its end. Papin listens politely as he speaks, though the details clearly matter far more to him than they do to her. With the recording playing shortly afterward, its images filling the room with scenes meant to celebrate the triumph of their arrival. Yet what accompanies those words reveals a very different reality. Kiri watches silently as the footage unfolds, her eyes taking in the scenes the recording proudly displays as proof of their success. The weight of it presses quietly against her chest. Memories she has kept buried beneath routine, patience, and the careful calm that allowed her to live among these creatures. The grief she forces down still lingers in her expression, just long enough for Papin to notice. The weight behind it impossible for her to imagine. Her mind retreats toward the only certainty she still has in this world, and clings to it with everything she has. As time passes, the violent reactions that had once threatened Bubu's life become increasingly distant memories as her body adapts to the gradual exposure Kiri designed, each small step forward building into something far more successful than either of them dared to expect. For Papin, the meaning of that progress feels nothing short of a miracle. The long shadow that once hung over every meal has finally lifted. Gratitude follows that realization almost immediately, her voice carrying relief. Kiri lets that realization settle before speaking. Bubu is now capable of tolerating the very amount that once pushed it toward collapse, and that called for something simple: a celebration. The moment lingers only briefly before another familiar frame intrudes upon the house. The father's arrival settles like something expected, returning the room to its usual rhythm. His attention moves first toward the table where the food has already been prepared, and the sight of dinner waiting immediately stands out, the spread larger than usual. The meal slowly turning into the small celebration she had in mind. Bubu sits nearby with the restless excitement, enjoying the food that once made her body react so violently. The moment carries a strange sense of normalcy that almost feels misplaced within the reality of this house. Kiri remains slightly removed from the warmth filling the room, observing the moment with the same calm composure she has carried since the day she first entered this home. Her attention lingers briefly on the child, watching her devour the food set before her, a reminder that no matter how harmless she appears to be, those tiny hands will one day leave blood behind them. Papin's voice eventually breaks the quiet rhythm of the evening, as she begins speaking about the long path that had brought them here. Gratitude comes easily to her now. Without Kiri, she admits plainly, Bubu would never have reached this day. Kiri allows those words to settle without interrupting, her expression unchanged as she listens, before eventually answering with a quiet admission. She once had a daughter as well, a child who had suffered from allergies very much like Bubu's. The statement shifts the atmosphere around immediately. Papin looks at her with clear surprise, realizing that in all the months together, Kiri has never spoken about the life she had before. Curiosity follows naturally from that realization, and the question that leaves her mouth carries no suspicion, only innocent interest remains. If Kiri had a daughter, she asks, why had she never spoken about her before? My daughter? She was eaten, she answered. The meaning behind those words spreads slowly through the room, draining the warmth away. The silence breaks almost immediately as their attention shifts and draws Popin away. A small disruption quickly turns violent as he collapses forward without warning, the alien's body convulsing with brutal speed. As she tries to understand what is happening, fear overtakes her as another thought appears just as quickly, her instincts pulling her gaze back toward Bubu with desperate urgency, searching for signs indicating a reaction. Her hands move carefully until a faint irritation blooms across her own skin where it had made contact. The same reaction they had once watched on Bubu's body spreading with terrifying speed. The pieces fall into place gradually as Kiri speaks. The reactions that once seemed random had never been accidents. A rare blood type carried by a small number of humans had quietly revealed the weakness in their bodies, and now the result unfolds beside them with brutal clarity. The convulsions gradual, while the silence in the room grows heavier, and by the time Popin finally lifts her eyes from the irritation spreading across her own hand, the movement beside her has already faded into stillness. Kiri allows the quiet to settle before calmly delivering the only conclusion that had ever mattered. Humanity's rebellion has already begun. Something else begins to reveal itself beneath the quiet. Gathering enough of it had required patience. Popin thought, small opportunities used carefully whenever they appeared. Fragments preserved and concentrated over the passing months until the blood could be turned into something far more destructive. Popin's strength begins to fade as the reaction spreads through her entire body. Yet even as the fear rises within her chest, her first instinct is to reach for the child beside her. Bubu remains completely unaffected. Her body had adapted. The understanding settles over Popin as she pulls the child even closer. The fear that first appeared in her eyes slowly fades into something far calmer. From the moment they first met, she admits quietly, something about the way Kiri looked at Bubu had always felt strangely familiar to her. There had always been something else in that gaze, the look of a mother watching over a child. And before the last of her strength disappears, she manages to speak, thanking Kiri for saving her daughter, for gifting her the ability to survive. When strength finally leaves her body entirely, only Bubu remains standing in the quiet aftermath, her small hands tugging desperately while confusion slowly turns into frightened cries that echo through the room. The sound lingers long enough to stir something deep within Kiri's memory. The desperation in that voice carries an echo that Kiri recognizes far too well. A recollection of familiar events unfolding once again before her eyes, the scene replacing the quiet room around her with the chaos of another moment that had once begun in almost the same way. Her daughter's voice calling out through pain while the swelling spreads across her face faster than her mind can understand. The panic that followed had come instantly, her thoughts scrambling through half-formed ideas while her hands searched desperately for something that might stop the reaction. The number she needed refused to appear in her mind when she tried to recall it, the seconds stretching longer with every breath Rin struggled to take, until the only thing left to do was move. The streets had blurred around her as she forced her body forward with everything she had left, the weight clinging to her shoulders growing weaker with each step while Rin's voice trembled softly against her ear. By the time she pushed through the hospital doors, her strength had nearly given out, the desperate momentum that had carried her across the streets finally faltering the moment Rin was taken from her arms. The panic that had been tightening around her chest since the reaction began slowly began to loosen, replaced by relief, knowing the child she had carried there was finally in good hand. When she finally saw her daughter smile again, the relief that followed felt almost unreal. The memory fades just as quickly as it arrived, the hospital dissolving back into the silent room where crying continues to echo. Kiri steps forward almost without realizing it. The warmth of that trembling body against hers stirs something buried deep within her. The grief she had carried in silence for so long, rising again with sudden clarity, finally escapes her lips. She will kill them all. Time passes after that night, though the war spreading across the planet leaves little room to measure it in ordinary ways. The discovery Kiri made has quickly grown into something far larger than a single act of revenge. The weakness hidden within their biology turning into the foundation of humanity's first real chance to fight back. When she stands again before the graves that mark what remains of the world she once knew, the people approaching her now speak with a different kind of respect. Reports arrive from the battlefield describing territories reclaimed, enemy forces pushed back, the poisoned rounds she helped develop now being produced in numbers large enough to change the course of the war itself. The conversation that follows carries the quiet optimism of people who finally believe survival might be possible again. A question of whether human specimens should be brought in for further research seems like a simple matter, yet Kiri answers without hesitation, explaining that such experiments are no longer necessary. The path she takes after leads far below the surface of plain hills, descending into the hidden facilities that now serve as her stronghold. Inside, the atmosphere is far removed from the event unfolding outside, the smell of cooking drifting through the room while conversations discussing dinner start, and complaints about the pork appear with the same familiar stubbornness, yet the habit is corrected quickly enough, the reminder given that meals are not something to argue over. That there was a time not so long ago when even a single bite would have been impossible. Something Boo Boo has slowly adapted to over time. And within that quiet underground home, far removed from the violence still unfolding across the surface of the planet, a quiet life taking shape, beyond the past that once made it impossible.